Our duty to fight for our freedom.
All right, let me look at the time. Okay, it is after 1 o'clock. Good afternoon, everyone. This is the Gordon Plaza Task Force. Appreciate everyone being here with us today. As usual, the way we begin this is with a statement from the folks from Gordon Plaza. Ms. Dedmond, I believe you're handling that for us today. Okay, Ms. Dedmond, go ahead and start. And just for recognition purposes, I want to say that we've got Councilmember Green, myself, Council Vice President Morrell, Gilbert Montano, our CAO. Obviously, we've got Gordon Plaza residents on the audience. We have a representative from, we've got Corwin from the City Attorney's Office. Ms. Robles is here as well, representing the administration. So with that, Ms. Dedmond, I turn it over to you.
Thank you. Good afternoon. We don't want to be here long today, but we'll be here as long as it takes to achieve what we need to move this process forward, because actually we don't want to be here at all. We are here because we have to be. It is our responsibility to care for ourselves, each other, and the future generations impacted by these issues. Because this so-called state entity has fought against us for over 40 years, we have no choice but to fight back. Today is about ensuring we move this process forward, and that is all we are here for. We want the full funds we need to move into healthy homes of our choice. So today we have updates, we have a problem, and we have a solution anchored in a clear demand. Our demand is and has been consistently clear, and our demand includes a fully funded relocation at full replacement costs had our homes not been built on toxic soil by the city of New Orleans, not a devalued amount. Moving expenses to honor our right to live in healthy homes of our choice without having to incur any debt as a result. Must occur prior to any future project or construction begins to ensure our safety, health, and dignity as human beings, particularly during this time of a global health pandemic of COVID, which is not over despite what some may act, while many of us are already immune compromised. We have also made it clear that we are prepared to engage in direct action, as we have done before, to block trucks that had no business coming into our community to do construction and put our health further at risk by digging up concrete. So we just need to make it clear before this discussion goes any further that we will do the same again at the point that someone tries to evict us from our homes. We will not accept abuse in silence, and we will not accept abuse and not fight back. We are simply here today to move this forward, and we would like to do so without further unnecessary roadblocks and delays. To move this process forward, we have 4 things we need to accomplish today. So let's address issue number 1, the removal of the 30-day deadline from my offer, which was presented as a sample. Because the city required an appraisal to pay us, we demanded to have one home, my home, to be appraised as a sample for the entire community and demand for transparency, with a process that has historically proven to result in devaluation and discriminatory practices for Black people, particularly a community like ours. This is evident in the fact that we are even here still talking about this 1 year after being in these same changes fighting for the actual funding at the start of the last budget season. The city of New Orleans included an aggressive and unnecessary surprise 30-day deadline letter to accept or deny an offer, and this should be removed and provided in writing. That issue was presented during the last meeting on October 21st, and I have not received anything in writing yet retracting that deadline. And not only, but we are demanding that this be addressed today. And I would like a commitment that this be provided to me before I leave here today. So before we move on to issue number 2, who will provide this written elimination of the deadline on this offer for me today?
You know what, Ms. Denman, go through all the points. I'm going to get back to your point number 1. I'm going to get it done. Don't worry about that, but just go through all your points. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Issue number 2 is simple for us. Now that we know that sample appraisal has been complete, it is only appropriate that the questions we had to be addressed and resolved so that every resident of Gordon Plaza can have their offer letter sent to them, so planning for relocation can begin. The city requires an appraisal to meet the requirement of law to buy our houses and land. Therefore, because appraisals have been found to be used for devaluation and in discriminatory ways, especially with Black residents in community like ours, which has historically been the case, we have demanded transparency in this process as a form of prevention on our behalf. Therefore, when we requested only one home be appraised, my home, using the agreed upon and appropriate to the law methodology, yet after receiving the appraisal, we still had questions that we did not feel were answered for us and in satisfactory way in this last meeting. We deemed this appraisal to be not only unsatisfactory and, as Mr. Thorns would say, a true travesty, but also a clear example of what and how environmental racism continues to be perpetuated. For us, for our community, this needs to be addressed today. Therefore, we are submitting a letter from a Louisiana licensed appraiser regarding relevant portions of the appraisal methodology and regulatory requirements. The reason we are choosing to submit this letter versus a formal review, because now the city of New Orleans has the opportunity to problem solve these concerns regarding the sample appraisal before the remainder of the residents of Gordon Plaza are provided their long overdue offers. Issue that we had after receiving the appraisal, which we know impacted the results, are we currently live in a non-flood zone in brick homes. The 3 homes selected as comparables are not. We see that the chosen comparable used in appraisal are all non-brick homes comparable in flood zones. The appraisal form does not provide adequate rationale for limiting neighborhood selection. Such limitation can lead to discriminatory practices with material consequences. We see no unimpaired value for land in appraisal, despite appraisal noting $28,000. We see no source for data used to select comparable sales and determine land value. When we asked Mr. Thorns to this work in this most expedited way, he said he could not do so in the 2-day turnaround that we requested and that he needed a week. We respected that window because we wanted him to do the job in the way necessary to move this forward. However, as the letter states, this form report is not appropriate for the assignment. It is a Freddie Mac form 2055 intended exclusively for mortgage lending use. Additionally, it was retired from use decades ago. In addition, the report should be a narrative report, as form reports are too restrictive for non-lending applications. Finally, this form no longer meets current USPAP guidelines, which means that we waited an extra week for something that was still in question. And according to Mr. Thorns, my house was the most unique because of the add-on and square footage. The form is outdated, and the most essential part that we cared about was the use of the Marshall and Swift cost summary that was done after the actual report was written, which gives us no confidence that any full use of the complete tool kits of 3 methodologies or a combination of any of them was truly considered to solve for the problem that we have, which is the way in which appraisal processes are used to devalue and discriminate against Black people in community like ours. So because we already know that this process is proving to be all of what we stated it would be to begin with, we are here to move it forward once again. We need all of the residents to have our offer letters to be provided to us as soon as possible, so you can attend to what you need to regarding the law. And then we need our relocation assistance and moving expenses attended to, which do not require you any appraisal process. Your appraisal process is careless, cruel, and results in both intentional and unintentional material consequences that impact lives. And this is despite you actually having the tools and resources to use to demonstrate that fair market value is only fair when both a willing buyer and willing seller determine it's fair. For us, we want to each We want each resident of Gordon Plaza to be given their offer from the city of New Orleans so we can move forward and access our relocation assistance compensation so we can move into healthy homes of our choice. We would like every member of the community to be sent their offers so we can move forward with the process. This should be done no later than this coming Friday. So each resident of Gordon Plaza can attend this meeting next week with their offer letters in their possession so we can move this process forward. So before we move on to issue number 3, we would like confirmation that this is going to happen. Okay, so moving on, because I believe Councilmember Moreno is going to tell me to move on. To issue number 3, we would like to confirm the process forward regarding the full moving expenses and other relocation assistance compensation. And yes, we want to have say in the process each step of the way to prevent unnecessary roadblocks and delays. When the city of New Orleans forced an offer an unannounced, non-agreed upon response deadline, there was no mention of relocation costs for any moving expenses, which are due to the residents of Gordon Plaza and an essential part of this fight. Therefore, the residents of Gordon Plaza demand that the city council and administration take action to provide assistance to fully fund relocation costs. When Mayor Cantrell ran for office the first time, when asked about our situation, said that she would use city resources to address this issue and make sure that we were able to live in healthy environments. When she won the second time, she said this was an opportunity to address past injustices like ours and named us as Gordon Plaza. We are not here today to get into a debate about a process that you all have in buying out our houses. We are here to be made whole so we can move into healthy homes. But let us tell you something else about this $510 that the replacement cost analysis resulted without anti-Blackness including in the formula. This amount was never the amount we expected for our house alone. $510,000 addresses the house, it addresses the land, and it addresses the entirety of our full relocation costs associated with relocation and move-in expenses. That total is for everything needed to not only buy our homes, but to make us whole in this moment. We understand that we can never get justice from an unjust system, but we will not be made to enter into a situation worse than the ones we are in now because of added exploitation in the face of our situation. Last but not least, at the Gordon Plaza Task Force meeting, this must be done before the meeting ends.
Okay, thank you. All right, let's start with item number 1, remove the 30-day deadline for Ms. Denmont to accept the offer. Corwin, I know you're here. The city attorney's office works for the mayor and the council. I'd like to direct you to draft a letter to her removing that provision, since she, of course, was kind enough to use her property as the sample property so that we could learn more about this process.
The letter has gone out to Ms. Dedmond from Cher Garner withdrawing the correspondence.
Can you get me a copy of that then?
I can.
Yeah, let's get me a copy of that right now, and then we can print it out and give it right to her.
Yeah, I knew that you were going to be your first question, so I didn't.
Perfect. So if you could just get someone on your staff to print that, and we can give it to her.
Can I just ask when
Sure.
it was sent out, Mr. Corwin?
I believe either Friday or today. I'm not sure.
Okay, so let's print it out.
Yeah.
And we'll give it we'll get it. Yeah, we're gonna print it out. So, and bring it straight to me, please, so that I can hand it to her. Thank you. Okay, so, until you get that letter and he's going to print it out, let's go to number 2. And this is really interesting. This letter that we received, today from, the residents from, Appraisal Research and Compliance. And it's a lengthy letter, but it did a review of the appraisal. There are many pages of potential issues that it brought up, but it wraps, and I'm not going to go through all of them. We can pass out the letter.
Councilwoman, just so everyone is clear, I just want to note again, repeating what Ms. Sheena just said, it is not NOT, intentionally a formal review. It is a letter after the examination.
Yep.
Provided to the city of New Orleans so that if there needs to be any correction made, that it can be made. It is not a formal review.
Right. But I'll say this, and I want to read the last line because I think the last line is important, and it goes to what Angela just said. Even though this is not a formal review, and it's certainly not another appraisal, but it did look through the report on a lot of the surface levels, or on the surface level, and it says, quote, at the very end, "There are numerous issues with this report, and the items pointed out are what are easily recognized without spending a great deal of time on the overview of this report." So, I think, Mr. Thorns, I don't know, I'd like for you to comment on this letter. I don't know if you've received it. Have you received a copy of this letter in advance?
No, I have not.
No, he did not receive a copy. He indicated that if it was a formal review, he would need time to examine it prior to this meeting. And so because it is not, we want to present the letter now. And this is an opportunity for everyone to speak about it now.
Yeah, I wish that, you would have been able to look at it before, even though it's not a formal review. And I get it, Angela, that he said
Because
he
there's
didn't want
nothing
it.
debatable about it, but you can speak about it if you'd like.
But if you haven't, have you looked at it at all?
No, I have not. And
I think
we agreed at the last meeting that they were going to have a formal review by a licensed, certified real estate appraiser. And they were going to deliver it to me and I was going to review it and I'd be prepared to talk about it today. I have not, and I would respond to it rather.
Yeah,
have
he
not
doesn't have to
received-
respond to it unless he wants to. We're not mandating that he do so. We're not putting any pressure on him.
Yeah.
And we're not here to scrutinize him today.
Yeah, I understand that, Angela, but I am actually concerned about some of the things that are mentioned. And so I would like for you to take a look at this, whatever you want to call it. If it's not a formal review, but it was a review of the appraisal and look at some of the components that are mentioned, because I mean, they even mentioned some things as to that this was done so quickly all in one day that it even talks about this wasn't sufficient time to complete an assignment of this time. So if you could just review what has been now provided to you, not right now, you can and respond to us back via email. I think I do think that would be important.
Well, again,
Sorry.
I submitted to you an appraisal. And as a licensed and certified appraiser, I respectfully request that you provide me with a review appraisal by a licensed certified appraiser that I can respond to. That's fair. I mean, if you find that something wrong with the appraisal, have it reviewed and have it reviewed by the licensed certified appraiser and then give it to me. When they asked me for an appraisal on the house and they gave me 5 days to do it, and I did what they asked me to do, and I gave it to them in time. So I think it's only fair for, if I'm gonna have an review, let me have a formal review.
Yeah, and that'll be up to them on whether or not they want to move through that process. But I think that, there are some points mentioned in this particular letter they're providing by Appraisal Research and Compliance that you may want to look at because there could be some things that, maybe you had not considered. I'm not an appraisal expert, but this does bring up some points that I think do have some potential merit.
I will look at it.
Thank you. Bringing us to the offer letters, was that the next part of item number 2, Sheena? Okay, so then explain that part again, Sheena. I just want to make sure I get it right. I don't want to put words in your mouth. What are you all asking for with the offer letters to be done?
That, so we were told that appraisals had to be done on the other homes as well. If we can get those appraisals done and offers sent out, at least by Friday.
So how many appraisals are left to do, Mr. Thorns?
Probably somewhere in the neighborhood of 60.
Okay. So I'm not sure Friday maybe, for him to do all the appraisals by Friday.
The only reason why we were saying Friday is because we were told by Mr. Thorns that he had all the information he needed on the other homes. My homes was the only unique one that he needed more information for. So we didn't think it would be a very long time that he needed.
I'll let you respond, Mr. Thorns.
I did what you asked me to do, and I did it on her property. I'm not saying to you that I can turn around 60 appraisals in overnight. It's going to take some time to do that. And because I have seen the houses, because I'm familiar with them, I'm not familiar with them as of the date and time that I'm conducting the appraisal. And so I need time to address it. I need to inspect the property and I need to write a report.
So then, for our understanding, what would be the timeline then for all 60 remaining properties to be appraised?
It depends on the corporation of the people who live there. As soon as they let me in, I'll start the process. I'm not sure how long it will take.
Okay.
We have made it very clear.
So just really quickly, the good news about the spirit of the meeting today and last week and the week before for us has been to move the process forward. So just for people, be patient with me real quick, just for people who might have missed the last meeting. The beautiful thing about not only that letter, but about the work pattern of Mr. Thorns is he actually is the only person thus far who has met any deadline that has been determined from this meeting. So we want to acknowledge that. In the last meeting, the community said to him, when it came to the sample appraisal, "Sir, it's a Wednesday. Can you turn this around by Friday?" He said, no, I need more time. The community said that's a justifiable request if he wants to put in the right amount of time to get it done and get it done well. Well, that was Wednesday. He was at Machina's house on Thursday. The appraisal was completed on the 14th, which was the same day as the visit. He indicated that he could do it, but that house was a little bit different than the other ones. He only needed to see that one because it was a little bit different than the other ones. When we asked for the appraisal to be turned around in 2 days, he actually did it in 1 day, and that's the more complicated home. So we are simply saying to the city of New Orleans, this is your problem to solve because the residents need their offers to be established this week because they're not trying to take this into the Thanksgiving holiday. This needs to be resolved. So here's the good news. I want to speak from a place of good news, and I hope that you're listening, is that Mr. Thorne says he has all of the information necessary. Councilperson Moreno indicated that, asked him the question, does he need to go into any more homes? He said no. During COVID, for 2+ years, appraisers have been driving by houses in their cars. We know at the end of the day that he has all of the information he needs. And if he does not, and if he needs some support, that $100,000 contract that was signed by Cher Garner, pay some more people to help him out. It needs to get accomplished, and it needs to get accomplished this week, and everything is available to make that happen. We want to move this forward.
It's not that I don't understand. Yeah, okay, so I'm sorry, we're gonna have to back up to item number
No,
one.
that's okay, and
I'm-
I can recap
on.
those.
And I'm sorry, I'm gonna
points
be
that I
honest
need to
with
say.
you. I missed what you said because I'm not
okay.
really happy with the letter that I got from Cher Gardner.
Neither are we.
So I'm reading the letter from Cher Garner, and what it does is that it doesn't withdraw the deadline on the offer. It withdraws the whole offer.
Problem.
And so that is a problem. So what I've been going back and forth with is that I want this letter reprinted and that the deadline is what I want withdrawn.
Thank you.
So the issue though is that the law department wants a specific deadline. It says that it needs one.
Mhm.
I would rather just withdraw the deadline and then send out another letter once we can come to a, conclusion with the other appraisals, et cetera. And then she can be on the same timeline as everyone else and get a new letter that
Mhm.
says, we've sent you this particular offer and now you're going to have the 30-day deadline or whatever it is with all the other residents. But
That's correct.
so can we do that, Corwin?
And I just want to go on record as saying thank you for everyone's participation in this meeting, for collective transparency, because there's patterns and trends. And just like was named, This thing is in the mail, headed toward Machina's home right now. So had we left this meeting and Machina when it got home, she would have then received a letter that says, your offer has been withdrawn. This is how this works. These are the patterns and trends we just simply aim to interrupt. It would make everybody's life that much easier. Transparency, please.
So Corwin, my question is, can we get a new letter sent right now, printed out, that withdraws the deadline, the 30-day deadline? And then once we come up with letters and appraisals for everyone else, send Ms. Demond a new letter with a deadline.
Simple.
As I expressed to you up there, the law department's issue is having a letter out there with no deadline. That's the reason
Well,
why.
can't you just put on the letter that a deadline will be assigned to you shortly?
Well, in counter to that, I would say to you is that Ms. Dedmond has already expressed on the record today that she rejected the offer.
I didn't hear her say.
Madam
that.
President, may I jump in?
She never said that.
Can I just jump in?
Gilbert, go ahead.
Here's my thought, at least from the administration. We have very important things to deal with as it relates to our negotiations with the property owners, right? I mean, this seems very small. I don't
Thank you.
see even the efforts to go back and forth. I think
Thank
what we're all saying is the same thing. We'll put an offer out. We want them to at some point accept an offer. I don't think we need this real focus of attention on this 10-day, 30-day, 45-day deadline. So I would recommend, at least from the administration standpoint, and I think the council's also saying this too. This was a test case. Let's leave it as a test case. Let's not put a closed, binder on this specific one. As we develop what is comfortable from the law perspective as it relates to a timeline, some bookend, I understand. But our goal is for them to sell us the property. So I don't think we should make it so technical and detailed at this point. So I think if we can simplify this, that's what my recommendation is. This probably doesn't even need this, consternation on
does
this
not.
particular issue. So I think I've thought through your side and the other side, and I think that if we use hers, and I'd say it to Denisha as well, if we use hers, our goal is to get them to sell the property. Let's make sure that we have some sort of, and I'm just saying this to simplify the process, because I do agree that there are going to be more challenging pieces of negotiation that we have to deal with between a bunch of other things. I just don't think this is one of them. I say that we just accommodate the openness for the residents in regard to not a specified timeline for this particular one, but we come up collectively. And I'm sure they would want that as well, a timeline in the
Correct.
future. Is that okay?
Listen, I don't have a problem with it. It's just, I'm looking at it from the standpoint of the correspondence that was issued by Sheriff Garner clearly leaves the door open. It says the city is ready and willing to purchase your property.
Well,
An
I think
appraisal
I think the problem is that it withdraws the $358,000 offer. And so it doesn't say that, we're willing to discuss, purchasing your property later at that same price. I mean, if I were her, I wouldn't like this letter either, because how do I know that down the road, the new offer is not going to be $100,000?
And from the administration, I think it just, whether it was intentional or semantical or whatever, it just creates a little bit of adversarialness
Agreed.
that's unnecessary. And I know that's not your
It's
position.
not the intent.
And I know it's not the intent. So I think that's just what we're saying. Let's just clarify it. This is
Yeah,
not the part that we
yeah.
have to be.
And Corbin, I think if you can have something just printed up by the law department, not Sheriff Gardner, but by the law department, like just right now, I have someone on your staff, if they could just print it out, and have,
Can I just
the-
make this statement on the record now? I mean,
Oh,
No,
No,
actually,
we want it in writing. We
Yeah,
want it in
yeah,
writing.
I think if you, just for trust purposes, I think it would be best if, there's something in writing, withdrawing the 30-day deadline, keeping the $358,000 offer. And I don't think anyone would have a problem saying that, a potential deadline to accept the offer may be coming or will be coming in the near future or something like that. Because everyone understands that there's going to be deadlines coming down the road, but it's just that on this particular test case, when no one knew there'd be a 30-day deadline to approve the offer, she was absolutely caught by surprise, especially since we haven't really worked through the whole process.
I understand. I just, I guess from the law department's perspective too, is that there are other letters that have gone out that have provided the 30-day deadline. And at the direction of this council, the deadline did not apply to Ms. Dedman because she's a test case. But what was attempting to be conveyed is that the law department in the city of New Orleans is still ready and willing to purchase her property. However, we just didn't want to have some unlimited amount of time, because if we did, then we potentially would have to go and withdraw that at a later point, which I guess would
Yep.
be potentially offensive. I don't know. I mean, I guess where I'm at with it is our thought was to leave the door open. We weren't closing the door as far as attempting to purchase the property. What we were doing is we were not just having some unknown deadline that would later have to be withdrawn because of non-action. That was the point of the letter, but
There's going to be action. The residents have not drawn this process out at all.
Can
But
you work
yes,
on fixing the letter?
what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna send, we'll get another letter with everything except the deadline.
Yeah,
and
can
to the
you
ex-
start? Yeah, I think can you start working on that now, Corwin, for us? So we can have
Sure.
someone on your staff working on that?
Yeah.
Great, thank you. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Montano, for weighing in on that.
Thank you,
Appreciate
Mr.
it.
Matano.
Thank you, Mr. Montano. If I can just add one more affirmation behind what you said. This is one of the reasons in the Gordon Plaza Task Force Committee meetings that the residents have said, when there are going to be decisions made, deadlines, timelines, that they be collectively discussed here so that they don't have to be a surprise to the residents. Because all of this that everyone's talking about impacts their lives directly. The rest of us, we're just here. So it's important that they be involved in this process and they're in the room. So there's no need for discussions that big to be happening without their involvement. It could make the whole process that much smoother. And we're hoping that, once again, for the duration of this meeting and going forward, that's the position, that they know what's going on.
Okay, so I apologize. Angela, can you come back? I missed right before we got back to the letter,
Yeah.
what you
so
had talked about.
So basically, just a couple of quick things is that the last time we were in this meeting, the residents asked for the sample appraisal to be done because the meeting was on a Wednesday. Could it be turned around by Friday? Mr. Thorne said, because this house is a little bit more particular, what he'd like to do is he'd like to wait until Wednesday. This is an important piece. We believe that he had all the information he needed to turn it around by Friday, truth be told. However, what ends up happening is Wednesday's gone. He comes to the house on Thursday. And according to not only the appraisal, but the letter, he did the report that same day, which means we could have had the report in our hand by Friday, the appraisal in our hand by Friday, and saved us a whole nother week. But we're saying that the rest of the properties are ones that he said many times that he has the information about. He doesn't need to go in, all those different things. So in order to move this process forward, you all are saying that you need an appraisal by law. Ain't nobody fighting you about that. The only thing people have been fighting about is making sure that it's not done in ways that devalue or discriminate. So we didn't come in here to slice up Mr. Thorne. We came in here with a letter to say, hey, since everybody tells us we don't know shit, here is a licensed, Louisiana licensed appraiser who's provided you for free a 14-page letter examining some of the things we had already said last week, but he's coming in it with neutral eyes because he doesn't even know the ins and outs of this. So when you see that, he says, it being turned around in a day probably wouldn't have been enough time for a house that he's examining for the first time. However, he asked for an entire week. He had an entire week to work on it, but it's dated the 14th. We came in here on the 21st. So the slighting the concerns, the questions, the lack of trust is justifiable. So rather than looking at us like we the problem, how about saying thank you to the residents? Because this provides an opportunity to course correct whatever you all need to before the rest of the offers come back and before you address what needs to based on this sample. So you can scrutinize the letter all you want, but it says things that you should take into your consideration. And we're not trying to rush him right now to do that. We're saying, take it, y'all all look at it. And if anything about it is questionable on that end, y'all discuss it amongst yourselves, because what the residents want is the money that they need to move into healthy homes of their choice. This nitpicking thing don't come from us, but every time you drop something on our laps, you expect the residents to take it. You expect the rest of the community to take it. We're here to say no to that. This could move so much faster. So what Mr. Montano just said about this part in the deadline, that's what we've been trying to say all this time. We dealing with stuff that are unnecessary obstacles and delays. So to move on to the next thing, that's what you missed. And to move on to the next thing, we're saying, hey, you guys are saying you need appraisals. Get your appraisals. Do what you need to do. With that 14-page guidance, by the way, because the level of question is beyond measure. You all have been the one talking about the law from the inside out. Want to do things right, want to dot I's and cross T's. Well, that's 14 pages to ensure that whatever you guys have to do, pump out these appraisals so the offers can be determined, because at the end of the day, here's the good news for all the white supremacists who are listening, for all of the racists who are listening, and for all the people who are like, oh my God, we don't want to see Black people get that much money, so we're going to use this appraisal process to make sure that they don't get it. What we're saying to you is the residents still ain't going to be able to go nowhere even after this is over, because the dollar amount will not let them. Therefore, we come in for the relocation assistance fund. You don't need an appraisal for that. They need relocation assistance and they need moving expenses, which ain't nobody debated about. So can we move this forward?
Hang on one second, Councilmember Thomas.
No, first of all, thank you, Ms. Kinlaw. Thank you, Mr. Storms. Thank you, council members. Has there ever been an official document that describes the rules of engagement, timelines, responses, processes, where at least the residents and then the folk negotiator have to, on behalf of the city, have a document that shows this is how this process is supposed to go, from access to appraisal till agreeing with the appraisal, to disagreeing, till if moving or not moving. Has there ever been anything in writing that says these are the intended rules of engagement? Because I know in every—
Well, that's a great question, so I can answer that. Number one, the city of New Orleans hired Chair Gardner to pull all that together. And because we have never seen any of that, the residents have time and time again presented all kinds of options, solutions, considerations for that, to include a timeline to help support the process. The timeline that the residents have given has never been honored. And the scope of work for the appraisal process has really been placed into Mr. Thorne's hands to have created that. Your own conversation from Chair Garner indicates that they have been waiting for Mr. Thorne to share. So he is the expert in that area, and we're not here to nitpick that. We just know the residents need to move forward. So all that stuff, y'all figure that out amongst yourselves. Until they get an offer letter, they're not going to be able to know what they're dealing with. So once we get an offer letter, then you all can make a determination about how you want to engage with the relocation assistance to make sure that they can go somewhere. Here's the good news. When the residents actually have the amount of money that they need to move, they can move. It's that simple. Ain't nobody trying to drag this out. When you guys are sitting in your healthy homes of choice, carving up y'all turkeys on Thanksgiving, the residents of Gordon Plaza are going to have to contend with this still. And we're saying no to that. They should be able to go into their holiday season with some sense of clarity about what 2023 is going to look like for them. So all the rest of this stuff is smoke and mirrors. How do we ensure the offers get generated? Y'all process is y'all process. We've seen the one and we've given feedback on the one. We're ready to move this forward.
Mr. Thorns, forgive me if I missed if you already answered this question. Did you give an answer on how long it would take for the remaining review of the properties would take for you so that offer letters could go out?
No, I did not.
What does that timeline look like then?
I don't have any idea. Again, my timeline relies upon the person, the homeowner, to allow me to do an appraisal on the property. They acknowledge I can do that. I can go out and visit the property, do the inspection, and write the report. Now, I don't know, I did a sample as you recorded because you asked me to do it in a very short period of time. And I did that. But I'm not saying that every appraisal I can do will be in that short period of time. It will not.
So, okay, let's put it best case scenario where you have a 100% cooperation from the residents. How long would it take you?
I don't know. I don't know. I mean, I don't know what. I just don't know. I just don't know.
Is there like a range?
My problem with hypotheticals is that once I open my mouth and I say something, it becomes, that's what he said, and that's what he should do. I
And
can,
if you said it, you said it.
Well, I think too, we're kind of looking and the residents are looking for, is this going to be something that takes a matter of, a couple of weeks to a month, or is this something that takes, 4 to 6 months? I just don't know.
well, I think it will take somewhere in excess of or around a month to do it, but not 6 months, no.
So you're giving, so let's start with the range. So a month? I'm just trying to
Well-
narrow it down here and figure out what we're dealing with.
Well, first of all, we have somebody writing a review appraisal that has comments on the appraisal, that suggestion to you that maybe that thing should be done some other kind of way. We need to resolve that first. Because one of the things that I heard was that they want a narrative appraisal report. In other words, they want a narrative, which is tons of pages to describe or whatever the case is. Unnecessary, but if you want that done, it takes a lot of time to do that, okay? Secondly, I am required to be familiar with the property that I'm appraising. And having looked at these properties over the years, I'm not saying that does not constitute inspecting the property as of the date of value that I issued it for. It doesn't meet that threshold. So my process would be, is I got a call about a property. I would immediately arrange a time to go out and make the inspection. I would immediately go back and write the appraisal report and send it in. Now, how long would that take per property? Generally, it takes about 7 days to get it all together. Generally, that's what it takes. So you're talking about 7 days times. I mean, I'm saying that if I were doing several properties concurrently, it wouldn't mean 7 days for each property stacked on top of each other. It would mean that it would be 7 days. Most likely, if I was doing 2 or 3 appraisals, I could do them all in 7 days. Okay. But I cannot account for the unforeseen. First of all, I need to be sure that we're on the same page when you receive an appraisal report from me, that it meets what you want. That's the first requirement, because then we don't have to cover that ground anymore. Secondly, if I agree to a timeline, I will work tirelessly until it's done to meet that deadline. And I always meet the deadlines that I set for myself.
Councilman. Mayor,
Ludwig, oh, did you have a question too, Eugene?
Well, I have a question just in general, why we would want to get every appraisal done as opposed to those that someone requests an appraisal to be done for. So I mean, that can narrow down the number. We don't have to have done all 60 because there are some people who don't want to have their houses appraised right now. They have made a decision for whatever reason that they don't want to be involved with this process. So at the end of the day, maybe we could have the request come in per appraisal that is done and say within the next week, the number of appraisals that comes in by request of an owner. Because if we have an appraisal done and you have a value on it, there's still a privacy concern with regards to releasing that information that people have been asked to have done. So shouldn't we have it such that people ask for the appraisal done and then you provide that information?
We can help expedite that issue if this can be resolved right now. The residents who decide that they want their offer within the time frame that's been mentioned, they can all be acknowledged in one list, one time, and Mr. Thorne can go from there.
It has to come from them.
It will come from them.
Okay, then that's fine. I think that within a week, we should be able to give Mr. Thorns a list of the numbers of people and their names because they've signed something or they've responded by. an
Correct.
email. So then therefore, we won't have to do 60 appraisals. Let's see what we get done with the first ones. So can we agree, since we want to leave with the determination here, that those who want to have an appraisal done will simply send their email to Mr. Thorns and he will get it done?
The community will, can communicate amongst themselves about that process.
But eventually.
But that
it
can be
has
done.
to- it
No,
has
no,
to
you're gonna
come
get an
from
answer
somebody.
today. You're gonna get an answer today before we leave.
How?
But you're not gonna declare that for them.
No, I mean.
They can
how-
discuss
how would-
that.
How would you get an answer from somebody who's?
The
not
same
here
way
today?
it's always happened. You know how you tap us and say, let's go into the hallway? That's what they will do.
No,
And
no.
they will come back and say, this is how they would like to do it, whether it's in email, in a hard copy document, that's gonna be resolved today. We're not gonna delay that. They've heard the request and they will discuss it amongst themselves and come back and say yay or nay.
Well, that's fine, because if it's
Correct,
today,
that's
then there
fine. We
aren't
can
60,
keep moving.
there aren't 60 owners here, so therefore there'll be a reduced number, and that can be a sample. Okay,
Ms. Hurst.
So let me be clear about this, that, Mr. Green. You are going to provide me with a letter with the names and addresses and the phone numbers of the people that I'm supposed to go out and do the appraisal today?
no, I am not.
Well, who is going to do that?
I would presume that Ms. Kinlaw can answer that because.
The residents will answer that.
So what'll be determined today, Mr. Thorns, is they're going to figure out like how exactly they will be providing you the names of and contact information of everyone, whether it's going to be, I'm assuming the easiest thing would be a list of everyone, but they may want,
Everyone who wants to have an appraisal. done.
right, everyone who wants to have an appraisal or they'll email you directly on their own. But I would think a list with contact information would be simplest, but that's what
Simple.
they will decide today. It's not that you'll get the list today, but it's that they will decide how they will transmit that information to you today. Okay. Ms. Hurst, you had a question?
Some clarity, because you're saying the appraisal. Mr. Thorne said he has to come in. We've stated, the majority of the residents have stated that due to COVID, we don't want anyone in our homes. Also, I'm gonna go back to number 2. This review, which is 14 pages. The very first page indicates by some discrepancy in the type of form that was used. It indicates discrepancy in the dates. This is just the first page. And the references for this 14-page document here was done by the uniform, was approved from the Uniform Standards of Professional Guidelines and the Louisiana Real Estate Appraisal Board. Also, the form that was used was outdated. So my question is, if you're gonna come in and do an appraisal, I would think that these issues need to be rectified before you attempt to do another appraisal. Because I'm only talking about, as I stated, the first page, not going into the 14 pages. And this is not an appraisal. So that's my concern. I want to make one other statement, is that we have been discriminated against, and I hate to keep bringing this up, but it's so that you issue out letters like this with us thinking we dumb. A bunch of dummies. And thanks for pointing that out, Councilman Moreno. Thank you, Mr. Montana, for the words you have spoken. But I am sick and tired of us being totally underestimated as human beings. And I ask that process, that discriminatory process, stop today. I'm calling it out, and I'm gonna continue to call it out until you treat us like we have some some education. We may not be lawyers, but we can read and we not dumb. Thank you.
Ms. Narera,
Sure, go ahead.
what I have here is a document. It's a 4-page letter from an appraiser. There are pages 5 through 14, or it's taken directly from USPAP, the book itself. It's just a reprint of that. So before we get to the point of indicating that what I have here, this review, is a document that is critical of the appraisal itself. From page 5 to 14 is nothing more than a reprint of what's in USPAP. The other pages, generally when an appraiser reviews an appraisal, he takes
It's
it.
not a review. It's not a review.
Okay.
Hang on. Go ahead, Mr. Thorne. Mr. Thorns, go ahead. Hang on, y'all. Please let him answer.
Well, she says now that it's not a review, so there's nothing else I can say about it. It's not a review, so.
Move on.
Okay, so a couple of things here. So first, we've already made that determination that we're going to, you're going to get a list somehow in the very near future, today or tomorrow, of everyone wanting an appraisal. So we've got that covered. Number two, Ms. Hurst requested that you do a thorough assessment of this letter that has been received to see if there can be any improvements to the appraisal process, whether any of these suggestions could be useful in improving the appraisals, or if anything needs to be changed. Are you willing to assess this letter?
I'll read it. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Do you want an official response back, Ms. Hurst, on response, back from Mr. Thorns on what the letter points out?
Yes,
Okay.
because
And
as he stated, I'm sorry. Starting on page 5, it does say it's an attachment to the following pages of references taken from USPAP and Louisiana law. Wouldn't this be the guideline that you would follow, Mr. Thorne?
I am following the guidelines of USPAP. And that is exactly what I've followed.
Well, according to the review.
Well, you say it's not a review.
The letter.
You have to understand, if you want me to approach this as a review and respond to it, then I need to have a review of the.
We're clear about that.
Well, we're not gonna be that technical.
I think if you can provide by the end of this week, your response back to this letter, that would be also helpful. A response back in writing, that would be helpful as well. Okay, next item. Where are we now?
So this process right here, in terms of reviewing it, we don't believe it's gonna take until the end of the week for that to be read, because it's not a review. What we do understand, though, is that the residents need their offers. The end result is their offers. So the more time you give to this process, the longer it gets dragged out. And the residents are not interested in going into the Thanksgiving holiday. And I want to also thank Mr. Threat, who was here in the last meeting, who indicated that this money that's sitting in the bank collecting interest, it's in the best interest of the city of New Orleans to spend this money by the end of the year. 85% of that money is supposed to be being spent on meeting the needs of the city, meeting the needs of the people. And here we are, the same time we were this time last year, trying to get the money allocated. There's just a lot of unnecessary grace being provided, when at the end of the day, these folks were hired some time ago, took one day to turn that around. So even if we padded with a little time and gave it 2 or 3 days, it doesn't take all that. Machina was asking if this can be resolved this week.
I think Mr. Thorns, you've said that you're not going to be able to do it this week
No,
because.
ma'am, I'm not.
Okay.
Can we ask why the city of New Orleans, and I want everybody to hear, can we just ask why the city of New Orleans indicating that this is a priority? The residents are saying, please, no unnecessary delays, would hire one man to attend to 67 properties. If you got to come out of that $100,000 and get him some help, then do what is necessary. Because we understand that you have been telling us the process cannot move forward until the appraisal is determined so that you all can make an offer based on that appraisal. So no appraisal, no offer. I just want to go on record as saying that this process that you all are following in terms of the appraisal, we haven't pushed back against the word appraisal because we know at the end of the day, while all of these properties are being sold across the city and all these members of the rich ruling class are fighting each other over property, this ain't got shit to do with the residents of Gordon Plaza. But now that this law is being applied to the residents for an issue that's not about them, now everybody wants to care about the law. If we were to unearth all the other things that are going on in the city, y'all don't really care about the law, but the residents are saying, hey, we'll follow the law. And you have all these tools available to you to actually follow the law and do it the right way. And now there's excuse after excuse. We want to move this process forward. Because this is a requirement that you all indicated. You want to keep talking about the Constitution? You want to keep talking about this? Let's handle it then. Let's get it done. We're helping out by providing the letter.
I suggest that you hire some more appraisal. First of all, you started off with a racist law firm, litigators like we're a bunch of criminals. They continue to do, you sent a racist, a lawyer into our meeting day one who showed all of it. Then you continue to issue these letters right here. I want everybody to see this. Put it in the media. This is a disgrace. You would not issue this to any white people. And I hate to keep saying that. So please hire some more lawyers or hire some more appraisals. We don't need no lawyers because we're not criminals, but you're treating us like we're criminals.
The other part to this too is that there was no RFP, RFQ, RF anything needed to bring Mr. Thorne on board. Chair Garner selected him. He joined the team. That's all under their sphere. If he needs help, we're not here to problem solve that for you guys. You guys figure that out. You all are being paid to do this work. Figure that out. But we need the offers to be generated, and that can be done by this week.
Hey, Angela, Councilmember Morel is going to have to run, but he did want to talk about the relocation costs.
Well, what I want to talk about is the ordinance that I have pending on the 3rd. Basically, the goal with that ordinance, and I said in the meeting that we had previously, was to create the fund itself. Once the fund is created, it is not difficult for the council in any meeting to identify funds and put funds in it. But I thought, and I think it's important to have the fund available because there is a cost in relocation. In particular, I've had some preliminary conversations just with moving costs, pure moving costs, like getting a truck to move your furniture for a whole home is tens of thousands of dollars. So the goal on Thursday will be to create the fund, and then we will have a conversation at a later date on how we're going to put the money in the fund. I know that based on the conversation today, it seems like there will be some lead time and when everyone will have their appraisals and make the decisions on whether or not they're going to get them. And obviously we'll do our best as a council and make sure there's synergy between the two hitting at the same time. Should we have a mass decision to take the appraisals and have to move towards that movement cost?
Okay, so thank you for that. That's very clear. And so just before you depart, while you're sitting there with CAO Montano, we just want to make sure that a couple of things, and these are real quick because I know you got to go, are not future obstacles. So one, what you just described makes sense. We also know that any given time, anytime there's money being allocated, shifted over, eventually it's gonna make its way back to the administration. They have to sign off on these things. Am I incorrect about that?
That is
So we
correct.
want to make sure that even if it's done, because this $35 million was allocated almost a year ago. So if this money gets allocated and it's just sitting there because we cannot get clearance from the administration, it's gonna be a problem. So we need to know proactively, and we know that it's possible because these relocation dollars for assistance and moving expenses are not attached to an appraisal. So everybody's been out of shape about $510,000. Are people clear that that $510,000 includes moving expenses? They know how much that will cost. So just to be clear, when that transpires, we'd like to follow up in the next meeting and talk more about that, because you all, I know, can take action on a lot of things this week. There's 3 budget meetings this week. 2 of them come before the next council meeting.
Yes, well, we're gonna have budget meetings pretty much every day over the next 20 days
Yes.
because of the general budget process. So we'll have budget meetings every day throughout this process.
So am I hearing you say that coming
Well-
this Thursday, the fund itself is going to be brought up in the Thursday meeting?
Correct. The legislation I currently have is to create the fund.
Yes.
So that'll come up on Thursday. Now, just to be clear, once we create the fund, at any given point in the future, once the council and the budget committee identifies which money we're gonna put into it, they can do that at any time. So there's flexibility on when we can put that money there. To your point, how that money will be utilized and when it will be accessible, we will have to work with the administration on that because we can put the money in the fund, as you've seen previously. We put money in a fund, but as far as how the money's allocated, that requires us to work with the administration to do so. Now, that being said, I think that there has been a tremendous amount of progress due to your own efforts as the Gordon Plaza relocation group on holding everyone to account to get us through that process. And I think that we, at least as a council members, I can speak for us as a whole, we're trying to get this issue resolved as quickly as possible. So
Hey, this is great, Councilman Morel. So just two things. While Mr. Montano sitting there, is this in alignment with what you believe is possible? Because in representation of the administration, we want to proactively make sure we're moving this thing forward. And so with that being said, we also understand the worst case scenario, these dollars can be easily calculated. There's nothing that stops you from finding a separate pot of money to allocate into this fund, or even within the $35 million you have, not any longer being attached to an appraisal.
we can't use that 35 million for the relocation fund because the way those funds are designated. So we would have to find budget dollars, as in the city's operating budget and the actual money to put into that fund. So that is actually a easier, more flexible
Okay,
process than a bond process.
I'm hearing the words. I am hearing the words easier and more flexible. I'm hearing the words easier and more flexible. So the question is, when that transpires on Thursday, Mr. Montano, what is needed after that?
I mean, I can't speak definitively. I think the council and the administration have to chat. I think as far as the idea and the plan for it, there's not going to be opposition, right? I mean, the whole concept,
Thank you.
there's no opposition on that. Where I know we will have to have, council's council and our council discuss is how that affects the former lawsuits and equal protection issues and what that could transpire as a result. So working through that legal question is the only thing I think the administration and the council has to make sure we're shored up on, so that we don't open the city up to other liability based on the former lawsuits and the equal protection issue. But as far as the concept and the purpose and the goal and the objective, the administration's in line.
Sure.
But I won't minimize that issue that I just raised relative to the legal ramifications that we have to work through, sort out to make sure that the city is protected from that potential class action.
Okay, so I want to lean on the good news. The good news is that we're planning to come back here this time next week for a meeting anyway. So if this is being approved on Thursday, the fund is there, all these conversations could be happening this week. Because part of the other problem, which is very resolvable, is that a lot of times people don't wait until like the day before, the night before, or the morning before these meetings to connect and converse about these things. Whereas the community's waiting for a whole week, another week go by, and you all could be actually problem solving this together proactively instead of waiting till we get here to scrutinize it several times over. We're telling you what the needs are. You're saying that it's possible. So we just need to make it happen. And the good news again is that there's 2 council meetings this month. We're asking you, Councilman Morrell, we're asking you, please not to wait until the council meetings to attend to things that could be discussed before, so that if any action has to be taken during the council meetings, they can happen, because the residents do not want to take this into the Thanksgiving holiday, and they don't have to. It's not necessary.
Well, just to be clear, there's no conversation necessary before the creation of the fund. The fund is not the issue.
Mhm.
I think the conversation that Mr. Montano is talking about is us figuring out how we use the money from the fund in a repayment process that doesn't violate the principles he said. So,
That's understood.
so Thursday, there is no obstacle or opposition to creating the fund. That will happen Thursday.
So that puts us in the situation where we can come back here again this time next week and talk through just what you said to ensure that there's no delay. Because if another action has to be taken, there's a whole bunch of budget meetings that happen in between and another council meeting on the 17th. The residents are intent on not taking this into the Thanksgiving holiday. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Okay, Sheena, what was item number 4?
4 was scheduling our next
Oh, and
meeting.
scheduling our next meeting. Okay, got it. All right. So can we do a recap? Angela, please let me know what I'm missing. just
Well,
in case
first, does Ms. Sheena have the letter?
Corwin, where's the letter? Okay, it's being typed right now? Okay. How much longer? Okay. How about this? Can you come here and read it to me? What she has drafted so far? Yeah. Come here.
The letter that's being drafted
Yeah.
is going to be the exact same letter that was transmitted. I don't know what the date of it was, making the offer.
Mhm.
It's going to be the exact same letter, except it's not going to have a deadline on it. That's what's
Okay.
being prepared.
Okay. So word for word, same letter.
Yes,
Okay.
that's what I asked for.
Okay, that'd be great.
I gave her, I gave my assistant the letter. I scratched out the 30-day deadline. I said, draft another letter just like this.
Great, perfect. If you can just check with her again to see if it's almost done, because we're not wrapping the meeting until I get it. Thanks. Okay, let's recap. So first, we're getting the letter, and we'll adjourn once we get it. Number 2, on the appraisals, how are they going to be getting the information, or how is Mr. Thorne's going to get the information?
The residents will
everyone-
speak amongst themselves and
Okay.
it'll be sent over. We'll actually send it to you all.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you want to speak amongst yourselves now? Because I'm still waiting on the letter anyway.
Say it again.
Do
Okay,
you want
that's
to,
fine.
yeah, can y'all just real quick go speak amongst yourselves? I'm waiting on the letter anyway. I know we don't like delays, but I just rather just handle this now. Yep.
How you doing? Happy Halloween. Welcome to the party.
All right, everyone.
Okay, so we want to be able to move this process forward. So the list will be sent over to you no later than Wednesday to give all of the residents an opportunity to sign off and declare themselves on the list. Our objective is to get that to you beforehand if possible.
And who's
And
it
if for
coming
whatever
from?
reason,
Who's it coming from? Just so I'm on. the
it'll come from the residents.
So Miss Amar, Miss Rainey.
Yeah, we'll send you the list over.
Okay.
And if for whatever reason, there's a resident that's uncontactable within the next day or so, we understand that he can move forward with the people he has until we can get them. So that's not a problem.
So do you think that, Mr. Thorns, then by Wednesday instead of Friday, you can have your response back to the ARC letter as well? So we can just kind of stay on that timeline, because if you've got your response back to ARC and they've got the names in, then we can start kind of moving everything forward.
Wednesday, you want it?
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Thorns. Appreciate it. Perfect. Okay, so all I'm waiting for now is still my letter, really Sheena's letter, but in the meantime, let's start planning for next week, if that's okay, looking
Can
at.
I ask you,
Sure, go ahead, Mr. Thorns.
am I going to receive a formal review?
That's up to the residents.
That's what I need. That's what we promised. That's what I'd like to have.
No, it was not a promise. The residents, that's what they wanted to do, but they changed their mind because they're not paying for this. This was provided to you for free. So thank you.
Hey, Ms. Tipper, come on, you wanted to make a comment. Do you still want to make your comment? Yes, come on
Yes,
up.
please.
And I apologize. You've been asking to speak for quite some time. Come on.
I was able to run it by the residents. My name is Ariana Tipper. I am. Pardon? Oh, thank you. My name is Ariana Tipper. I'm a real estate agent with French Quarter Realty, and I also was part of the two-lane analysis team. I was the realtor on the team. And so the conversations today have been very positive. It sounds like everybody is in agreement. Like, we have a willing buyer and we have a willing seller. We just have to come up with the fair market value, right? That's the agreed upon price. And so, and in most real estate transactions, well, raise a hand, who has actually bought a house up here? Everybody? Most everybody? Okay. So whenever you buy a house, somebody submits the offer, say $350,000. And then perhaps you counter that offer with, say, what is $35 million divided by 67? $522,000. So what I'm proposing perhaps is that, and this is just an informal offer on behalf of Ms. Dedmond and residents, that the residents would like to counter the city's offer at $522,000 apiece. We can write out the additional terms. It will be contingent on an appraisal being completed and your financing being secured. But we understand that you are already pre-approved essentially for $35 million. So if the money is there and the will is there and the appraisal will be done, can the offers be accepted, or the counter offer be accepted by the city? And then all of these processes move forward simultaneously. as a normal real estate transaction might.
I mean, I don't think the council lawyer or the city lawyer thinks that proposal's legal is the short answer, because it's not a typical relationship the way you described. We can go as high as we can legally defend, and that's always been the objective for what the actual value of the property is.
Should we put this in writing then to you?
Well, I mean, doesn't matter to
mean,
me
if
what you put in writing. I guess what I'm telling you is that, have you checked with or talked with any of either the council's lawyers or our lawyers
Oh, yeah.
on this concept? And I think they'll say the same
Not about
thing.
the concept, no.
Well,
I mean,
but I'm telling you, but I guess what I'm saying, just to not give up grandiose hopes, right? I think, I think that we have to be realistic of what the legal frameworks, at least I've been dictated, the council's been dictated on what we can work with.
What is your understanding of the legal framework, please? So to make sure that we're all on the same page.
Well, I'm gonna reference back the legal letter that was sent to the council, the administration, I believe passed on to the residents. If not,
And
that's
said
up
that
to
it-
the council to provide, to stand on its own legal frameworks. It's unfortunate you haven't read that or knowledge of it.
I have, and as I understand it, there is a requirement that an appraisal be completed. Am I correct?
Yeah, that's absolutely
is-
part of our constitutional requirement. Yes.
Okay, and what past that am I missing?
What's that?
What past that am I missing?
It has to.
I
be
think
an
you're saying
appraisal.
I think you're saying you want a counter proposal.
Yes.
What I'm telling you is that what the appraised value, the market value is what we're limited to
Market
as a
value and
government.
appraised value are two very different things. Please be clear. Fair market value and appraised value are different
Okay,
things.
first, I'm not going to debate the dais with you. I'm not sure, frankly, who you are, who you represent, or what you're doing right now. And I think I'm going to stop the conversation back and forth and address you to our legal team. If you want to, in writing, make your argument to our legal team and then have them return to you what the governmental requirements are, then I'm happy to do that. But as far as the debate, it's Montano. Thank you.
Montana, forgive me. Please, do realize I was on the analysis team, right?
I'm not going to have the debate with you on the dais. If you would like to submit in writing to our legal team, your argument,
Hmm.
I'm happy to relay that to them and then they can relay the argument back to you. Thank you.
I think it's important for the residents to know what exactly the legal argument is. Because
Well, I'm sorry that you're not telling them that, because if you have it, I would imagine you could reiterate it as well.
I mean, am I missing something?
So I want to just name, in the spirit of moving this forward, everyone should just know and be clear that as it relates to the law is very clear. The law says that the city of New Orleans needs an appraisal. The residents have agreed to that. But where the problem has come in is that people are equating, making them synonymous. That the appraisal result is equivalent to fair market value. And unfortunately, that is not true. An appraisal, hopefully, if done correctly, non-discriminatory, non-devaluative, would be a nice estimate of fair market value. But it's very clear that fair market value indicates willing seller, willing buyer. And so with that being said, that's what she's sharing. That's it.
Okay, where, can you find Corwin? Thanks. Yeah, I need to find the city attorney with a letter still. I'm still there, guys. All right, so I need to talk about next week and the next meeting. Because on the 7th, we have the registrar taking up council chambers to count ballots. On the 8th, we're closed because it's election day. The 9th and 10th is all crammed all day for budget, but we can do it on the 11th, which is a week from this Friday at 2:00 or later. If that
So what
works
was,
for you
so
all.
what was the date? The date was,
The 11th. 11/11.
President Mayor, just to be clear, because I know you ran through those dates.
Yep.
Are you saying there's no other date before the 11th that's open or
Be-
available?
Because this, I'll go through it again. The 7th, the registrar is in here counting ballots. No one can be in here. On the 8th, City Hall is closed because it's election day.
Mhm.
On the 9th and 10th are the first 2 days of budget, which go all day long. On Friday, we do have budget hearings, but it's not the big departments, so the budget hearings won't last as long. And so I would suggest on the 11th, anytime from 2 or later.
Okay, so two things. One, is there a time 2 or later that works for the residents on that
The
day?
11th? It is Veterans Day. But we're open. We're open.
Hmm? How's the 4th of November?
Same, let me see. That's, yeah, we have all the budget hearings too, and that's, we have fire department, EMS, that's gonna take all day.
That's before the. We're gonna.
So it's 11th, we're open, right? Yep, City Hall is open on the 11th. So the 11th, 2 o'clock?
11th at 2. So if the meeting's gonna happen on the 11th at 2 o'clock, just as a recap, that gives more time. We feel unnecessary time, but that gives more time for actually all the things we talked about today to be resolved.
Okay, does that work then?
So we should actually be able to come here on the 11th and this all be resolved. People's offers are made. The fund will be created.
True.
All those things should be done by the 11th.
And he would have received the list of all the different appraisal companies as well. I mean, not companies.
All that.
residents. Hey, everyone, listen up real quick. Hang on, listen up, because I want to read the letter, the revised letter that I just received for Miss Denman. All right, dear Mrs. Denman, in response to a request by the city of New Orleans, an appraisal of your property at the reference location was conducted by a qualified licensed appraiser. A copy of that appraisal is enclosed for your review and consideration. Based on the results of the enclosed appraisal, the city of New Orleans hereby extends an offer of $358,000 to purchase your property at the reference location. In order to accept this offer, you must respond to this offer with your acceptance by contacting Mr. Brent Lillibart, excuse me if I mispronounce his name, of Bayou Title Inc. at 504-393-0315 to schedule an appointment to sign a formal purchase agreement. Mr. Lillibart is the closing attorney who will close the transaction, but neither Mr. Lillibart nor Bayou Title Inc. represent the city of New Orleans in this transaction. If you have any questions regarding the closing of this matter, please contact Mr. Brett Lillibart. Sincerely, Corwin St. Raymond, Chief Deputy City Attorney. So this letter is now correct. Okay. All right, here's your copy. I'm gonna give this over to you. All right, sorry that took long to handle, but we got that handled. Next meeting will be 2 o'clock on 11/11. All right, thank you. All right, everyone, we're adjourned. We've got our action items. Thank you.
I'd like to state one thing on the record though, because it's important that it be stated. Liberty Bank does not earn interest off the money in the bank. If you want to ask them, you can do as I did. You can call the vice president. They do not earn interest. It's not a debatable issue. They don't.